The alarm bells screamed through the metal halls of Kepler Station. Red lights flashed in every corner as soldiers ran past broken windows and smoking walls. The battle had been going on for 6 hours now, and things were getting worse by the minute. Marine Corporal Jake Murphy pressed his back against a wall and checked his rifle. 3 shots left. He looked around the corner and saw more of those bug-like creatures crawling through the smoke. The Vex were everywhere now. They're black. Shells caught the emergency lights as they moved like deadly shadows through the station. "Murphy, get over here," shouted Lieutenant Collins from across the hallway. Jake ran as fast as he could, jumping over pieces of broken metal and glass. A Vex warrior shot at him with green plasma, missing his head by inches. He slid behind cover, next to Collins and 2 other Marines. "What's the situation, sir?" Jake asked, trying to catch his breath. "Bad, really bad," Collins said, wiping blood from a cut on his face. "The Vex broke through Sector 7. Half our guys are dead or missing. We're pulling back to the main hangar." Jake nodded and looked around. The station was falling apart. Kepler Station had been humanity's biggest mining operation on the edge of known space. Now it was becoming a graveyard. The Vex had come out of nowhere 3 days ago, like they always did. Nobody ever saw them coming until it was too late. "What about the alien units?" Jake asked. "The Draknari warriors were supposed to help hold the center." Collins shook his head. "Some of them were still fighting. Others ran when things got rough. You know how they are about dying with honor and all that." Jake did know. He had worked with aliens before. Most of them were okay, but they had strange ideas about fighting and dying. The Draknari were tough fighters, but they cared more about dying the right way than actually winning sometimes. A loud crash echoed from somewhere above them. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lights flickered. The station's main power was failing. "We need to move now," Collins said. "Grab whatever ammo you can find, and let's go." Jake searched through the supply boxes scattered around the area. He found 2 full magazines for his rifle and some medical supplies. As he stuffed them into his pack, he heard something that made him stop dot. It was a voice, speaking in the rough, growling language of the Draknari, but it sounded different. Angry, but also something else. Desperate, maybe. "Sir, I hear someone," Jake said. Collins was busy helping another wounded Marine. "Yeah, probably more of those lizard soldiers running away." "Let's go, Murphy." But Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The voice came again, louder this time. It was definitely Draknari, but there was something about it that sounded like a call for help. "Give me 2 minutes, sir," Jake said. "I want to check something." "Murphy, we don't have time for this. 2 minutes, I promise." Collins looked at his watch and cursed. 2 minutes. "Then we leave with or without you." Jake followed the sound down a side corridor that led to the station's central hub. The voice was getting louder. As he got closer, he could see light coming from around a corner. Green plasma light, like the weapons the Draknari used. He moved carefully, keeping his rifle ready. When he looked around the corner, he saw something that made his heart skip a beat. A Draknari warrior was trapped under a huge piece of metal beam. The warrior was big, even for their species, probably 7 feet tall with dark green scales that looked almost black in the emergency lighting. The warrior was firing a plasma rifle at 3 Vex creatures that were trying to get closer, but Jake could see the problem right away. The metal beam had crushed the warrior's legs. There was blood everywhere, the dark red blood the Draknari had instead of the bright red the humans bled. The warrior was Zaraketh. Jake recognized her from the briefings. She was one of the best fighters in the Draknari military, known for never backing down from a fight. She had worked with human forces before and had saved a lot of lives. Right now, she was dying. The Vex were being careful, staying back because of her weapon. But Jake could see that her shots were getting weaker. The power pack on her rifle was almost empty. Jake made a decision that would change everything. He stepped out from behind the corner and opened fire on the Vex creatures. His rifle shots were loud in the closed space, and 2 of the bugs went down immediately. The third one turned toward him, making that horrible screeching sound they always made. Zaraketh used the distraction to put her last shot right through the creature's head. Green blood splattered on the wall, and then everything was quiet, except for the sound of alarms in the distance. "Human," Zaraketh said in English. Her voice was deep and rough, like all Draknari voices, but she sounded surprised. "Why are you here?" Jake ran over to where she was trapped. The metal beam was huge, probably weighing several 100 pounds. But what was worse was what it had done to her legs. They were crushed badly, twisted in ways that made Jake's stomach turn. "I heard you fighting," he said, kneeling down next to her. "We need to get you out of here." Zaraketh looked at him with those big golden eyes that all Draknari had. There was pain in them, but also something else. Confusion, maybe. "No," she said firmly. "Leave me. I am finished." "Like hell you are," Jake said. He put his rifle down and tried to lift the beam. It didn't move even a little bit. "Listen to me, human," Zaraketh said, grabbing his arm with one of her clawed hands. "My legs are destroyed. I cannot walk. I cannot fight. In my culture, this means I am already dead. You must go save yourself." Jake looked at her legs again. She was right that they were badly hurt. But he had seen worse injuries before. His sister Amy had been a medic before the Vex killed her on another station. She had always said that as long as someone was still breathing, there was hope. "My name is Jake," he said. "Jake Murphy. And I'm not leaving you here." Zaraketh stared at him. "You do not understand. My own people will not come for me now. A Draknari warrior who cannot fight has no honor. We do not save the broken." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He had heard about Draknari honor codes before, but he had never seen them in action like this. The idea that they would just leave someone behind because they were hurt made him sick. "Well, I'm not Draknari," he said. "I'm human. And humans don't leave people behind." He started looking around for something to help move the beam. There was a maintenance jack in a nearby supply closet. If he could get it positioned right, maybe he could lift the beam enough to pull her out. "You are foolish," Zaraketh said, but her voice was quieter now. "The station is failing. The Vex will send more warriors. You will die here with me for nothing." Jake found the jack and started setting it up. "Maybe, but at least I'll die trying to do the right thing." As he worked, he could hear explosions getting closer. The evacuation alarms were getting louder too. He probably had less than 10 minutes before the station's power core failed completely. Zaraketh watched him working. Silence. Finally, she spoke again. "Why?" she asked simply. Jake looked up from the jack. "Because everyone deserves a chance to live. Because leaving people behind is wrong. Because my sister taught me that giving up on someone is the same as killing them. Yourself." He activated the jack, and slowly the heavy beam began to rise. The jack creaked and groaned as it slowly lifted the heavy metal beam. Jake could see sweat dripping from his face as he worked the manual pump. Each movement sent the beam up just a little bit more, but it felt like moving a mountain. "Hurry," Zaraketh said through gritted teeth. "I can hear more of them coming." Jake could hear it too. The clicking sound that Vex creatures made when they moved through the metal corridors. It was getting closer. He pumped the jack harder, ignoring the burning pain in his arms. Finally, the beam was high enough. "Can you pull yourself out?" he asked. Zaraketh tried to move, but pain shot across her face. I cannot feel my legs, she said. You will have to pull me. Jake grabbed her under the arms and pulled as hard as he could. She was heavy, much heavier than a human would be. Draknari were built like tanks, all muscle and thick bones. But slowly, inch by inch, he managed to drag her out from under the beam dot. As soon as she was clear, he released the jack. The beam crashed down with a sound like thunder, sending up a cloud of dust and debris. Jake looked at Zaraketh's legs and felt his stomach drop. They were twisted and bent in ways that legs were never supposed to be. Bones were sticking out through her dark green skin, and there was blood everywhere. This is very bad, he said quietly. Yes, Zaraketh agreed. This is why you should leave me. Not happening, Jake said firmly. He opened his pack and pulled out the medical supplies he had grabbed earlier. It wasn't much. Some bandages, a few pain injectors, and some emergency clotting gel. Nothing like what she really needed. The clicking sounds were getting much closer now. Jake could see shadows moving at the end of the corridor. We need to move, he said. Can you hold on to me? Zaraketh wrapped her arms around his neck. Jake got his arms under her and lifted. She was incredibly heavy, but adrenaline gave him strength he didn't know he had. He started moving down the corridor as fast as he could. Behind them, he could hear the Vex creatures discovering the area where they had been. The clicking became excited, angry. They had found the trail of blood. Jake's legs were already burning, but he kept moving. Zaraketh's blood was dripping on the floor behind them, leaving a trail that the Vex could follow easily. He needed to find somewhere safe to stop and try to help her. There, Zaraketh said weakly, pointing ahead. Medical Bay. Jake saw the sign on the wall. Emergency Medical Station 3. It was just 50 meters away, but it felt like 50 miles. His arms were shaking from carrying her weight, and his lungs burned from running. The medical bay door was locked, but Jake managed to kick it open. Inside, there were basic medical supplies and a surgical table. It wasn't a real hospital, just a place for treating minor injuries, but it would have to do. He placed Zaraketh on the table as gently as he could. She was very pale now, and her breathing was fast and shallow. She was going into shock from blood loss. Stay with me, Jake said, grabbing medical supplies from the cabinets. Don't you dare give up now? I am dying, she said simply. This is what happens when warriors are broken. You're not broken, Jake said angrily. You're hurt. There's a difference. He started cleaning the wounds on her legs. It was horrible work. Some of the bones were completely shattered, and he could see that several major blood vessels were torn. He had watched his sister Amy work on injuries before, but he had never done anything like this himself. Why do you care? Zaraketh asked. Her voice was getting weaker. I am not your species. I am not your friend. We barely know each other. Jake used the clotting gel to stop the worst of the bleeding. My sister used to say that it doesn't matter who someone is. If they need help, you help them. That's what makes us human. Your sister sounds wise. Where is she now? Jake's hands stopped moving for a moment. Dead. The Vex killed her 6 months ago on Research Station Alpha. She was trying to save wounded civilians when their ship was attacked. Zaraketh was quiet for a moment. I am sorry, she said finally. She would have done the same thing I'm doing right now, Jake said, continuing to work on her injuries. She would have stayed. The clicking sounds were getting closer again. The Vex had followed their blood trail. Jake worked faster, using every bandage and piece of medical equipment he could find. He couldn't save her legs, but maybe he could keep her alive. They are coming, Zaraketh said. Jake grabbed a plasma rifle from the medical bay's emergency weapons locker. Let them come. 3 Vex warriors appeared in the doorway. Jake opened fire immediately, not giving them time to react. His shots were good, and 2 of them went down right away. The third one managed to shoot back, and green plasma burned past Jake's ear. He dove behind the medical table and kept shooting. Zaraketh, despite her injuries, had grabbed a smaller weapon and was firing too. Together, they managed to kill the third Vex. More will come, she said. Jake knew she was right. The Vex always traveled in groups, and where there were 3, there would be more. He went back to working on her injuries, but his hands were shaking now from fear and exhaustion. I need to stop the bleeding completely, he said. But I don't know how. Zaraketh looked at her legs. You will have to cut them off, she said calmly. Jake stared at her. What? The damage is too severe. The bones are destroyed. The blood vessels are torn. If you do not remove them, I will bleed to death. But if you do remove them, I might live. I can't do that, Jake said. I'm not a doctor. No, but you are all I have. She looked at him with those golden eyes. In my culture, losing limbs in battle is a mark of shame. But I am beginning to think that your culture might be wiser than mine. Jake looked at the medical supplies. There was surgical equipment in the emergency kit, including tools for amputation. His sister had shown him the basics once, but he had never imagined he would need to use that knowledge. If I do this, he said slowly, you have to promise me. Something. What? Promise me you won't give up. Promise me you'll fight to live. Zaraketh studied his face for a long moment. Why does this matter so much to you? Jake thought about his sister, about all the people he had seen die in this war. Because every life matters. Because someone has to care. Because if we stop trying to save each other, then what's the point of fighting at all? She nodded slowly. I promise. Jake started preparing the surgical tools. His hands were steady now, focused by purpose. This is going to hurt. I am a warrior, Zaraketh said. I can handle pain. As Jake began the terrible work of trying to save her life, explosions echoed through the station. The evacuation sirens were screaming now, and he could hear ships launching from the main hangar. Everyone else was leaving, but Jake stayed. He worked by the light of emergency lamps, using skills he had never wanted to learn, trying to keep alive someone that her own people had already given up for dead. Hours passed. Zaraketh drifted in and out of consciousness, but she kept her promise. She kept fighting. And Jake kept working, even when his hands cramped and his back ached and his eyes burned with exhaustion. Finally, just as the station's main power began to fail, rescue ships arrived. Human medics burst into the medical bay and found Jake still, working over Zaraketh's unconscious form. We need to get her to a real hospital, one of the medics said, looking at Jake's crude but effective work. You probably saved her life. As they loaded Zaraketh onto a medical transport, she opened her eyes and looked at Jake. Thank you, she whispered. Jake held her hand as they carried her to the ship. Don't thank me yet, he said. We still have a long way to go. The medical bay on the USS Liberty was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Zaraketh lay on the hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling. It had been 3 weeks since the battle at Kepler Station. 3 weeks since she had lost her legs. 3 weeks since her own people had declared her dead. She turned her head away when Jake walked into the room. He came every day at the same time, bringing books or food or just wanting to talk. She wished he would stop coming. It only made everything worse. How are you feeling today? Jake asked, pulling up a chair next to her bed. The same as yesterday, she said without looking at him. The same as I will feel tomorrow. Like nothing. Jake set a small package on the table next to her bed. I brought you something. Zaraketh didn't move to look at it. I do not want anything. It's a book about human military history. There are stories in it about soldiers who got hurt in battles, but found ways to keep serving. I am not human, she said flatly. Your stories mean nothing to me. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Do you remember what you told me in the medical bay? When I was working on your legs? I remember pain. I remember blood. I remember you making a mistake. You promised me you would fight to live. Zaraketh finally turned to look at him. Her golden eyes were cold and angry. I lied. I was dying and not thinking clearly. Now I am thinking clearly, and I can see that. You should have let me die with honor instead of saving me to live in shame. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What shame? You're alive. You're healing. You're going to get better. Better? Zaraketh's voice rose. Look at me, human. I have no legs. I cannot walk. I cannot fight. In Draknari culture, I am already dead. My commanding officer came to see me once. He performed the ritual of severance. I have no name now. No family. No place among my people. Jake had heard about that visit. General Thakmor had come with 2 other Draknari officers. They had spoken to Zaraketh in their own language for a few minutes, then left. Jake had seen her crying afterward, which was something Draknari almost never did. That's their loss, Jake said, not yours. You do not understand. Without honor, without the ability to fight, I am nothing. I should have died on that station. Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see other patients in the hospital courtyard. Some were in wheelchairs. Others were learning to walk with new prosthetic limbs. All of them were alive and working to get better. Can I tell you about my sister? He asked. Zaraketh didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to leave either. Her name was Amy. She was 2 years younger than me, and she wanted to be a doctor from the time she was little, always patching up injured animals or helping people who got hurt. Jake sat back down. When the war started, she joined the medical corps. She said someone had to help fix all the broken people. He opened the book he had brought and showed her a picture. She sent me this photo from her first assignment. She's standing with her medical team outside a field hospital. Look how happy she looks. Zaraketh glanced at the picture. The human female in the photo did look happy, smiling big with her arms around other medical officers. 6 months ago, Research Station Alpha was attacked by the Vex. Amy was there with her team, treating wounded civilians. When the evacuation order came, she could have left. Her transport was ready to go. Jake's voice got quieter. But there were still people in the medical bay who couldn't be moved. So she stayed. Zaraketh found herself listening despite not wanting to. The Vex got through the defenses. They killed everyone in the medical bay, including Amy. When we found her body, she was still holding a wounded child, still trying to protect someone even though she knew she was going to die. Jake closed the book and looked at Zaraketh. Do you know what I think about when I remember her? What? I think about how she never gave up on anyone. Not ever. Even when things looked hopeless, she kept trying to help people. That's what made her a hero. Not that she died, but that she lived every day trying to make things better for other people. Zaraketh was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, Your sister sounds like she was a good person. She was. And she would be really angry at me right now if she knew I was letting you give up. I am not giving up. I am accepting reality. Jake shook his head. No, you're feeling sorry for yourself. And I get it. What happened to you was terrible. Losing your legs, having your own people turn their backs on you. That's all awful. But you're still here. You're still alive. You still have your mind, your experience, your skills. What good are warrior skills without legs to stand on? Jake pulled out a small device and turned it on. A holographic screen appeared showing video footage. This is Lieutenant Lisa Park. She lost her right arm in a Vex attack last year. The video showed a human woman with short brown hair and a prosthetic arm that looked almost real. She was demonstrating combat moves to a group of new soldiers. She learned to fight with one arm. Then she got a prosthetic and learned to fight even better than before. Now she trains other soldiers who have been injured in combat. Zaraketh watched the video with interest despite herself. She moves well for someone with false parts. Human prosthetics are pretty good. We've gotten a lot of practice making them during this war. Jake switched to another video. This is Sergeant Carl Rogers. He lost both legs when a mine exploded under his transport. The new video showed a man running on two mechanical legs. He was moving fast, jumping over obstacles and keeping up with soldiers who had their original legs. How is this possible? Zaraketh asked. Technology, engineering, and the refusal to give up. Jake turned off the device. We humans believe that losing part of your body doesn't mean losing your worth as a person. Adokes stared at the blank screen. Drachnary prosthetics exist, but they are only given to warriors who lose limbs in honorable single combat, not to those who are crippled by accidents or explosions. That's stupid, Jake said bluntly. It is our way. Your way is wrong. Zaraketh looked at him sharply. You dare insult Drachnari culture? When your culture says that injured people should be thrown away like garbage? Yeah, I'll insult it all day long. Jake's voice was firm. Any culture that abandons its own people because they got hurt is a culture that needs to change. For a moment, Zaraketh looked angry enough to hit him. Then, slowly, her expression changed to something more thoughtful. You really believe that, don't you? She said. I really do. The next day, Jake brought her more videos. Stories of humans who had overcome injuries and disabilities. Athletes who competed in special leagues. Soldiers who returned to duty with artificial limbs. Scientists who made important discoveries while dealing with physical challenges. Zaraketh found herself watching them all. She asked questions about how the prosthetics worked, how the people in the videos had learned to adapt, how human society treated people with disabilities. We're not perfect, Jake admitted. Some humans are jerks about it. But most of us believe that everyone deserves a chance to contribute something. Even if they cannot fight, there are lots of ways to help win a war besides fighting. Strategy, logistics, training, intelligence, research. Amy saved more lives as a medic than most soldiers do with weapons. That afternoon, a new patient was brought into the medical bay. A young human Marine who had lost his left leg in a recent battle. He was crying and saying that his military career was over. Zaraketh listened to the boy's despair from her bed across the room. Finally, she called out to him. Marine, she said in her rough voice. The boy looked over at her with red eyes. Yes, ma'am, I am Drachnari. In my culture, warriors who lose limbs are considered dead, worthless. Do you think I am worthless? The Marine looked confused. No, ma'am, you're a hero. Everyone knows about what you did at Kepler Station. I have no legs, Zaraketh said simply. But you're still you. You still know how to fight and lead and all that stuff? Zaraketh nodded slowly. Yes, I am still me. She looked at Jake, who was smiling. Perhaps the problem is not with warriors who lose limbs. Perhaps the problem is with cultures that cannot see past the injury to the person who remains. The young Marine stopped crying and started listening as Zaraketh told him about the videos Jake had shown her, about humans who had found new ways to serve after being injured. That night, for the first time since the battle, Zaraketh picked up the book Jake had brought her and started reading. 2 months after the battle at Kepler Station, Zaraketh was finally sitting up in her hospital bed without help. Her wounds had healed well, and the doctor said she was strong enough to start physical therapy. but she still refused to consider getting prosthetic legs. "I am not ready," she told Jake when he suggested it for the third time that week. "You'll never feel ready," Jake said. "But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try." Before Zaraketh could answer, alarms started blaring throughout the medical station. Emergency lights flashed red, and over the speakers, a voice announced that Vex ships had been detected approaching their location. "All patients who can move, report to evacuation stations immediately," the voice said. "This is not a drill." Jake jumped up from his chair. "I need to get to my unit. Will you be okay?" Zaraketh nodded, though she felt fear creeping into her chest. Being unable to move on her own during a battle was terrifying. "Go. Do your duty." Jake hesitated at the door. "The medical staff will get you to an evacuation ship." But as soon as he left, Zaraketh could hear the sounds of panic in the hallways. Doctors and nurses were running everywhere, trying to move patients who couldn't walk. There were not enough people to help everyone, and not enough time. Through her window, she could see Vex attack ships dropping from the sky like deadly insects. Green plasma fire lit up the darkness as the station's defenses tried to fight them off. A young nurse ran into her room. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the evacuation area." "Help the others first," Zaraketh said. "I can wait." The nurse looked relieved. "Thank you. I'll be back as soon as I can." But she never came back. As the battle raged outside, Zaraketh could hear explosions getting closer. The power flickered several times, and she knew the station was in serious trouble. Then she heard something that made her blood turn cold. Vex creatures had gotten inside the building. She could hear their clicking sounds echoing through the hallways, along with screams and the sound of plasma weapons firing. Zaraketh looked around her room desperately. There was a plasma rifle in the emergency weapons cabinet, but it was across the room. With no legs, she couldn't reach it, unless she could find another way. She pulled herself to the edge of the bed and grabbed the 4-stand next to it. Like a crutch, she managed to swing herself toward the weapons cabinet. It took several painful minutes, but she finally reached it and grabbed the rifle, just in time. 3 Vex warriors burst through her door, their black eyes scanning the room for prey. They saw her sitting against the wall and chittered excitedly, thinking they had found an easy target. They were wrong. Zaraketh might not have legs anymore, but her arms worked perfectly, and her aim was still deadly accurate. She put precise shots through all 3 creatures before they could react. More Vex appeared in the doorway. Zaraketh kept firing, using the bed and medical equipment as cover. But she quickly realized that killing individual creatures wasn't going to solve the real problem. She activated the room's communication system and connected to the station's tactical network, even though she wasn't officially part of the defense force. Her old military access code still worked. "This is Zaraketh to Station Command," she said. "Zaraketh?" The voice that answered sounded surprised. "We thought you were evacuated." "I am still here, and I can see the Vex attack patterns from my position. They are not attacking randomly. They are following a specific plan." She studied the tactical display on the medical room's emergency screen. The Vex were moving through the station in coordinated groups, hitting key targets while avoiding the strongest defensive positions. "They are trying to reach the power core," she continued. "If you move your defenders to sections 7 and 9, you can cut off their advance routes." Acknowledged. Moving forces now. For the next 2 hours, Zaraketh coordinated the station's defense from her hospital bed. She couldn't walk or run or fight in the traditional way, but her mind was as sharp as ever. She saw patterns that other commanders missed, predicted Vex movements before they happened, and directed human forces to where they were needed most. When the battle was finally over, the station commander came to see her personally. "Commander." "Zaraketh," he said, using her old military title. Your tactical guidance saved this station, and everyone on it. I am not a commander anymore, she said quietly. I have no rank, no position, no people. Maybe not among the Draknari, the commander said, but we humans recognize talent when we see it. How would you feel about working with our tactical planning division? Zaraketh stared at him. You want me to be a human military advisor? I want you to help us win this war. Your species doesn't matter to me. Your ability does. After the commander left, Jake came to see her. He was dirty and tired from the battle, but he was grinning. I heard what you did, he said. Everyone's talking about it. The Draknari warrior who saved a human station. I just did what needed to be done, Zaraketh said. But she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Pride, not the old warrior. Pride that came from physical strength, but a different kind. The satisfaction of using her mind to protect others. So what did you tell the commander? Jake asked. I said I would think about it. Good, because while you're thinking, I have something to show you. Jake brought in a large case and set it on the floor next to her bed. I've been working with some human engineers on a project. We studied Draknari prosthetic technology and combined it with human designs. He opened the case, and Zaraketh gasped. Inside were 2 mechanical legs that looked almost like living limbs. But they were clearly more advanced than anything she had ever seen. These aren't just replacement legs, Jake explained. They're better than your original ones. Stronger, faster, with built-in armor plating and weapon systems. The engineers based them on your combat data from before your injury. Zaraketh reached out to touch one of the legs. The metal was warm and smooth, and she could see tiny lights blinking along the joints. Why did you do this? She asked. Because you're my friend, Jake said simply. And because I wanted to prove that humans can build things that help people become better than they were before, not just replace what they lost. It must have been expensive, Jake shrugged. I used my savings. And Lieutenant Park helped with the design. And Sergeant Rogers tested some of the movement systems. Turns out a lot of people wanted to help once they heard what it was for. Zaraketh was quiet for a long time, staring at the mechanical legs. In Draknari culture, accepting help is seen as weakness. What do you think now? She looked up at Jake. I think Draknari culture has a lot of stupid ideas. It took 3 weeks for the medical staff to properly fit the prosthetic legs and teach Zaraketh how to use them. The process was difficult and often frustrating. She fell down many times, and there were moments when she wanted to give up. But Jake was there every day, encouraging her and helping her practice. Lieutenant Park came to visit and shared tips for adjusting to artificial limbs. Even some of the human soldiers she had helped coordinate during the battle stopped by to cheer her on. Finally, the day came when she could walk across the room without falling. Then she could run. Then she could jump and move almost like a dancer, better than she had ever moved with her original legs. How do they feel? Jake asked, watching her test the limits of her new mobility. Zaraketh spun around and landed in a perfect combat stance. They feel like freedom. The next day, she accepted the position as tactical advisor to the Human Defense Forces. When she walked into the strategy room for her first official meeting, wearing her new legs and a human military uniform adapted for her size, she saw something she hadn't expected. General Thakmor was there, along with 2 other Draknari officers. Commander Zaraketh, the general said formally. General, she replied, I thought I was dead to your people. We have been watching your actions since the attack on this station. Your tactical guidance saved human lives, and word of your prosthetic legs has reached our high command. He paused. Perhaps we were too hasty in performing the ritual of severance. Zaraketh stood straight and proud on her mechanical legs. Perhaps your people need to learn what mine have forgotten. That true strength comes not from avoiding injury, but from rising above it. General Thackmore looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. We are here to discuss a joint operation. Human and Draknari forces working together, under your tactical command. For the first time since losing her legs, Zaraketh smiled. Then let us plan how to win this war. The war room aboard the human flagship USS Liberty was filled with tension. Holographic displays showed the massive Vex fleet approaching Earth's solar system. There were more enemy ships than anyone had ever seen before, like a dark cloud of death moving through space. They'll reach Earth in 18 hours, Admiral Carter said, pointing at the tactical display. Every ship we have is moving to intercept, but the numbers aren't good. Zaraketh stood at the planning table, studying the enemy formation. Her new prosthetic legs hummed quietly as she shifted her weight, analyzing the data. Around the table, human and Draknari officers waited for her assessment. The Vex have changed their tactics, she said finally. This is not like their previous attacks. They are protecting something in the center of their fleet. General Thackmore, who had arrived with a full Draknari battle group, leaned forward. What kind of something? I believe it is their command ship, the mother vessel that controls all the smaller ones. Zaraketh highlighted a section of the display. If we can destroy it, the entire fleet will lose coordination. Jake, now wearing the insignia of a lieutenant and serving as her tactical assistant, nodded. That matches what our intelligence has been saying. But getting to the center of that fleet would be suicide. Not suicide, Zaraketh said. Just very, very difficult. Admiral Carter looked skeptical. Even if you're right, we don't have enough ships to fight through their entire fleet. We don't need to fight through it, Zaraketh said. We need to go around it. She manipulated the holographic display, showing a complex flight path that curved through an asteroid field near Jupiter. The Vex expect us to meet them in open space, ship against ship. Instead, we take a small strike force through the asteroid field. While their main fleet engages our defensive line, we hit their command ship from behind. General Thackmore studied the plan. The asteroid field is dangerous. Many ships will be destroyed by the rocks alone. Some will, Zaraketh agreed, but some will make it through. And that might be enough. Who would lead this strike force? Admiral Carter asked. I will, Zaraketh said without hesitation. Absolutely not, Jake said immediately. You're too valuable as a tactical coordinator. If something happens to you during the mission, then you will have to win without me, Zaraketh interrupted. But this plan requires someone who understands both human adaptability and Draknari warrior tactics. I am the only one here with that knowledge. General Thackmore stood up slowly. If you are leading this mission, then Draknari warriors will follow you. Even though I am crippled? Zaraketh asked bluntly. The general looked at her prosthetic legs, then at her face. You saved a human station using only your mind. You created a battle plan that none of our generals could match. You stand here on mechanical legs that make. You're stronger than you were before. He paused. Perhaps our definition of crippled needs to change. 6 hours later, the strike force was ready to launch. 12 ships total, 6 human vessels and 6 Draknari warships. It was a tiny force compared to the massive Vex fleet, but it was fast and heavily armed. Zaraketh stood on the bridge of the lead ship, a human destroyer called the Defiant. She wore custom armor designed to integrate with her prosthetic legs, and she carried both human and Draknari weapons. Jake stood beside her as her second-in-command. Admiral Carter had tried to assign someone with more experience, but Zaraketh had insisted on choosing her own deputy. You know this is insane, right? Jake said as they prepared to enter the asteroid field. All the best plans are insane, Zaraketh replied. That's what makes them work. The asteroid field was even more dangerous than they had expected. Massive rocks spinning through space like deadly planets, creating a maze that changed constantly. 3 ships were destroyed in the first hour, crushed by collisions or torn apart by gravitational forces. But Zaraketh's tactical skills kept the remaining ships alive. She saw paths through the chaos that others missed, predicted the movement of asteroids before they became threats, and guided the fleet through impossible spaces. "How are you doing this?" asked Captain Rodriguez, the human commander of the Defiant. "I think like a rock," Zaraketh said, never taking her eyes off the navigation display. "I see the patterns, the forces, the inevitable movements. It is like combat, but with planets instead of enemies." After 4 hours in the asteroid field, they emerged behind the Vex fleet. The enemy command ship was directly ahead of them, a massive black vessel the size of a small moon. "There," Zaraketh said, pointing at the ship. "That is our target." But their approach had not gone unnoticed. Vex patrol ships were already moving to intercept them, and the command ship's defenses were coming online. "All ships, attack formation," Zaraketh ordered over the communication system. "Focus fire on the command ship's weapon systems first. We need to get close enough to board it." The battle was fierce and desperate. Human and Draknari ships fought side by side, their different fighting styles complementing each other perfectly. Zaraketh coordinated the attack from the Defiance bridge, directing each ship to where it could do the most damage. But the Vex defenses were strong, and more ships from the main fleet were turning to help protect their command vessel. The strike force was taking heavy casualties. "We're not going to make it," Captain Rodriguez said as another ship exploded on the display screen. "Yes, we are," Zaraketh said firmly. "Prepare a boarding party. We're going to take that ship from the inside." "That's suicide," Jake said. "No," Zaraketh said, checking her weapons one last time. "That's victory." The Defiant rammed through the command ship's outer defenses, taking massive damage, but managing to attach to the enemy vessel's hull. Zaraketh led the boarding party through the breach, her prosthetic legs allowing her to move through zero gravity with incredible grace. Interior of the Vex command ship was a nightmare of organic corridors and living walls. But Zaraketh moved through it like she was born there, finding the path to the ship's brain center with instincts honed by years of combat. Jake and a mixed team of human marines and Draknari warriors followed her, fighting off Vex defenders. As they went deeper into the ship, Zaraketh's artificial legs sparked with electricity as she kicked through Vex barriers, and her weapons never seemed to run out of ammunition. Finally, they reached the command center. The Vex Queen was there, a massive creature connected to the ship's control systems by thousands of organic cables. "Destroy the connection points," Zaraketh ordered. "Cut her off from the fleet." The battle in the command center was the hardest fight of their lives. The Queen was protected by her most elite warriors, and the room itself seemed to fight against the invaders. But working together, humans and Draknari managed to sever the Queen's connection to her fleet. The effect was immediate. Throughout space, Vex ships began losing coordination, crashing into each other or flying off in random directions. Without the Queen's central control, they were just mindless insects, but the victory came at a cost. During the final assault, debris from an explosion damaged Zaraketh's prosthetic legs, leaving her unable to walk again. As Jake knelt beside her in the ruins of the Vex command center, she looked up at him and smiled. "We did it," she said. "Yeah, we did." Jake looked at her damaged legs. "Can you move?" "No, but that's okay. I don't need to run anymore." Before he could ask what she meant, General Thekmor appeared with several Draknari warriors. But instead of walking past her, they knelt down. "Commander Zaraketh," the general said formally, "you have brought great honor to all our people. Will you allow us to carry you to safety? Zaraketh looked around at the faces surrounding her. Human Marines and Draknari warriors, all looking at her with respect and admiration. Not pity, not shame. Respect. Yes, she said. I will allow it. As they carried her back to the ship, Jake walked beside her. So what happens now? Now we go home, Zaraketh said, and we start building something better. A military where humans and Draknari work together, where strength is measured not by how well you can walk, but by how well you can lead, how well you can inspire others, how well you can turn impossible situations into victories. 1 year later, Zaraketh stood before a mixed class of human and Draknari military cadets. She was walking again on new prosthetic legs, even more advanced than her previous ones. But more importantly, she was teaching. True strength, she told her students, is not about never falling down. It is about who chooses to help you get back up and who you choose to lift up in return. In the back of the classroom, Jake smiled and took notes. Even after all this time, he was still learning from her. At the end of the lesson, a young Draknari cadet raised his hand. Commander, what if we get injured? What if we lose limbs in battle? Zaraketh looked at him seriously. Then you adapt. You find new ways to serve. You remember that your worth as a warrior comes from your mind and your heart, not from how many original body parts you still have. She gestured to Jake. This human saved my life when my own people had given up on me. He taught me that there are many different kinds of honor and many different ways to be strong. That is the lesson I want you to remember above all others. As the cadets filed out of the classroom, Zaraketh walked over to the window and looked out at the training grounds.